What's up, everybody? It's Kevin and Sergey once again welcoming you back to the channel for another in our Antares lore series.
This episode, we're talking about the Armaments of Antares.
That's right, we are going to be discussing today the myriad of weapons that are found on 7th Age battlefields in the hands of pan-human warriors.
It's mostly just pump-action shotguns. Full auto. Now, I say pump-action shotgun as a joke, but it's semi-serious. The least desirable and the first category of weapon that we're going to be talking about is your humble ballistic weapon. The same as any other modern ballistic weapon that you would find at a gun store down the street from you, is available in Antares.
It's easy to imagine the prevalence of these weapons because of the fact that manufacturing technology is so easy. You know, you have nanites and whatnot, so like simple mechanical weapons that utilize solid ammunition and chemical propellant is probably easy to produce in mass in the 7th Age. And we can see it most prevalently with the Gar. They equip their outcasts with lugger guns, and I'm pretty sure those are like solid slug weapons.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so there are, 7th Age or modern and Antares standards factions that do utilize ballistic weapons.
You would likely also see these weapons on quote-unquote feral worlds, or the worlds that have not yet been assimilated into the MTEL or received technology from the Freeborn or something like that, that would be attempting to defend themselves against invasion from these more advanced societies.
While these feral worlds that still do utilize the archaic weapons of the past probably do outnumber the more advanced civilizations on the entire Nexus, the more advanced civilizations themselves more prevalently use the next technology level up, which is magnetic weapons, or mag weapons as they're referred to commonly in the Antaran rulebooks.
These mag weapons are an evolution of their archaic kin because they do actually shoot solid projectiles. However, instead of the chemical propellant of the past, they use a magnetic pulse to fire ammunition much farther, much more accurately, and much more powerfully. This is similar to the gauze rifles and railguns that are being produced in real life.
This utilization of magnetism isn't the only thing that kind of puts the mag weapons above their ancient predecessors. They do fire physical projectiles, and one of the cool things about mag weapons is they usually contain an internal compressor field, which either houses thousands of rounds of ammunitions, which they're even different rounds, they have different bullets, flagettes, all these crazy little things that they can switch out on the fly. But there's even instances where the weapons will be loaded with solid material cores that can then be utilized by internal nanites to create ammunition on the fly. So a soldier with a mag weapon is a considerably more dangerous soldier than someone who has to have clips and physical bullets that they're loading into chambers and stuff.
Yeah, stalemates would last forever
in
the entire
it'd be
universe.
so bad.
Because you would not run out of ammo for days.
Yeah, it's true. Well, unless so the way that the weapons are utilized is pretty similar to modern weapons. The smallest would be just a handheld, mag pistol, which is really brutal if you can imagine in close combat. If you just shoot 20 rounds.
I mean,
in
if you have a handheld railgun, people
that's
are not going to mess with you.
With the punch and everything. But then they have, mag, rifles that, you said, have substantially higher, range bands than ballistic weapons and hit a lot harder. And then the even more brutal variant is the mag repeater, which can every squeeze of the trigger fires potentially hundreds of rounds in a minute, which is insanity.
Another benefit of mag weapons firing physical projectiles is that you can tailor the projectile that you're firing to your needs at the time. The most common example of this is the mag cannon that fires high explosive rounds that will explode when they enter something like a vehicle or building, causing massive damage. It's important to note that no matter how simple any of these Antaran weapons may seem on the surface, they're all integrated into the various MTELs of these societies and their nanotechnology. So, the scope on a plasma carbine will be connected to the larger MTEL, so it will not only probably target for you to a certain extent, it'll then that information that the scope is taking in will feed to your friends. And I mean, the MTEL would be able to tell you, this guy's aiming here, everyone else 2 clicks to the right and you're all aiming at the
Yep.
same guy, fire at once kind of
It
deal.
would, yeah, I mean, it would be insane. It would be like the old Warhammer art where everybody has like the eyepiece attached to their gun so that they can all fire like 80s movies, like they don't have to aim anything. And yeah, I mean, like you'd be able to switch between fire modes with just a thought, and you know your gun would understand range bands, and maybe
your
even,
guns
like,
can
have
self-repair,
gyroscopic.
which is pretty
Yes.
important. Like there would
And like we
never
said,
be an
produce their own
issue
ammo.
where like it was raining and your powder got wet. Like that's not a thing in Antares space.
No, yeah, I mean, you would know immediately. It'd probably be able to clear jams and everything, and that's why it's like overall, I just really enjoy the setting being so high sci-fi, and I love that they made sure that the weapons were right there with it and are that complicated. Now, granted, not all of them are going to be that way. I'm sure Boramites don't
Gar
utilize
weaponry
and Gar,
whatnot, yeah.
but those are the
Boramites
exceptions.
don't integrate with the intel that well.
Another mag system that is utilized basically all across the board, even by the most advanced Antaran civilizations, is the X-rail weaponry, which is kind of born from the mag weapon technology. These kinds of weapons come in, you know, sizes from my absolute favorite, the X-Sling, which is literally like a man-potable weapon that just shoots up and launches like dozens of bomblets in close combat. Close combat potentially, but also close ranges.
It's like a very
all the
goblin
way-
artificer weapon.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah,
like
it's so
the
cool.
wrist-mounted slingshot.
Well, I just love it because it reminds me of the Mandalorian's like little like.
That's exactly what it is.
Like
yeah.
little thing, yeah. So it's sweet. But these weapons go all the way up to like howitzer-sized weapons, and all of them work in the same way. They basically use the same magnetic, you know, pulse technology to launch bomblets or, you know, shells that have kind of like just an insane array of effects on the battlefield. It can be, you know, rounds that are dropped to disrupt enemies like shields and technology. It can be net ammunition that, you know, suppresses the enemy, or it can just be good old-fashioned plasma bombs to, like, you know, crater the enemy.
The majority of these X-rail systems are used for indirect fire, taking the place of something like modern-day artillery, which is why they're kind of used ubiquitously throughout Antaran space, at least as far as pan-human species go.
The next more advanced system of weaponry that is utilized pretty commonly across Antaran space and by the Imtel Society specifically is plasma weapon technology.
These represent your run-of-the-mill sci-fi energy weapons. They use a superheated plasma coil to send a burst of energy downfield. Anything struck by this burst of energy is subject to an ionization reaction that essentially creates a small explosion on the surface that is hit.
And I'd imagine that's why they have such a much higher strike value, is because I imagine that something hit by this superheated material, zoosh, and this goes like right through. I mean, a mag gun's going to do pretty similar, but I guess it's just one point of value difference.
Well, and think about like the amount of destruction. Like a mag gun might not even cause that much damage if you get hit, like because it's just going super fast. It might just go right through your shoulder. A plasma gun hitting your shoulder, the shoulder is not there anymore.
I was just saying, well, and you're burned. Like, I can only imagine that an Antares battlefield is pretty hyper brutal for how, you know, because it's like people would be like going like, ah! Ah! Because they'd be like all on fire basically. Because you'd have to imagine it would catch anything on fire that is flammable as well, like uniforms or the cover you've decided to hide in. These plasma weapons exist in basically the same range as weapons as the mag guns. Like you have plasma pistols that are carried by officers and whatnot. You also have plasma carbines. There's plasma cannons, plasma light support that basically is like a plasma machine gun, all the way up to plasma bombards that just like launch such a gigantic bolt of plasma they can like take out vehicles in one hit. But there is a reason why, other than just like the technological level, that certain factions like the Algorand, for instance, don't utilize plasma tech as much, and that is that it does have some like weird caveats. Like plasma weapons can be fired at similar rates of fire as some mag weapons, but they tend to lose their punch when they're doing so. The single shots or concentrated shots can be quite devastating. But like I said, if they're trying to do it a little bit more rapid fire, it does go down. And the heavier weapons are basically utilizing so much energy that plasma cannons, plasma bombards, and whatnot are subject to what is called plasma fade, and they can actually kind of overheat themselves, and that's just not as reliable to some tacticians.
It reminds me of the guns that the grunts carry in Halo, like little handheld ones that's like.
Oh yeah.
Or you can just go.
I mean, it's basically yeah. You can fire them and they overheat and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty similar. In a lot of regards, really.
Plasma technology is also often utilized in handheld form in the form of plasma grenades, which are the most common grenade in Antares space.
I can only imagine this is the case because the nature of the plasma being able to eat through things with its just sheer level of heat.
It'd be horrible. Yeah.
Well, because in the game
it's like a mega Molotov.
Exactly. You chuck grenades and they compound their strike value, which to me is you know what I mean? You see these strike troops run up to the side of a tank, or kind of like Terminator Future Wars now that I think about it. But anyways, and they just chuck one grenade, it blows up, causes a hole, the next guy runs in, boom, and it's just that plasma keeps eating its way through whatever you've hit. And it also, I think they utilize those pretty heavily when they're destroying fortified positions and whatnot, which is really sweet. While we're on the subject of grenades, whereas plasma are definitely the most common utilized in Antares space, there are some weirder, more specific grenades that do show up on the battlefield. And as far as I know, I think the Algren are the only ones that utilize solar grenades, solar charges is what they're referred to. And they still explode utilizing plasma, but they're so bizarre because they actually can be laid down anywhere and will recharge their power to full strength as long as they're exposed to any amount of sunlight or UV radiation, I guess, in general.
Which you have to imagine is actually a particularly devilish form of warfare, because you could lay down a mine, leave the planet, and 4 years later it kills somebody. It would ruin a planet almost as much as Distortion would.
Yeah, I feel like the Algren probably should answer to someone for those ones.
Yeah, that's a really crappy thing to do to a society.
Well, and they're dangerously powerful too, because those grenades in the game terminology have the hazardous hand-to-hand, so it's they're actually so powerful that you don't even really want to be using them in hand-to-hand.
Yeah.
But then there's other grenades as well.
The other two types of grenades that pop up are most commonly used by the Boramites, and those are fractal charges and implosion grenades.
Oh, them Boramites, always figuring out some way to tunnel through tunnel through mountains with non-weapon tech.
Implosion grenades utilize compression technology to essentially compress a large portion of space into a very small bit of space, killing everything within it.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, it would be really gross.
It's like a black hole grenade.
Yeah, we're going through this weapon thing, and all of a sudden, Antares is not as pretty anymore.
No, there would be so much blood
it would be
everywhere.
Horrible. Think if you throw a grenade, an implosion grenade at a group of dudes, and all of a sudden, all those groups of dudes are a tiny compressed ball of flesh goop.
Yeah,
that's horrifying. That's horror movie
stuff. It would just be
stuff.
A Kill Bill blood explosion.
Yeah, it literally, because then it would decompress violently. It would be horrible.
Oh, them Boramites. The other type, fractal grenades, are only just a teensy bit less horrifying.
A lot less horrifying. The implosion grenades are super horrifying.
Well, fractal grenades, you basically attach them to whatever or chuck them at whatever, and the grenade itself basically figures out which frequency to vibrate at to absolutely destroy whatever it is. So, like you said, it's
on
a
a
little
molecular
bit less,
level.
But it's not, because that means that you would hit someone and they would be the motion blur would affect, and then they would just be hamburger meat.
Yeah.
Because they would be
they might not even be hamburger meat, because it's at
liquid.
The molecular level. They might
just turn into
they just might turn into dust or gas or something.
Because it's destroying the molecular and atomic
completely.
Bonds. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. So I guess I'd take plasma if I'm gonna have.
I don't know.
Well, what am I talking about? That'd be a lot.
Compression is quick.
That's true. Actually, compression. There we go.
Oh god, you don't want to get hit. Don't get hit by a grenade in Antares space. It's so much worse.
And specifically, don't pick a fight with the Boramites. Just let them build or tunnel or whatever they're doing.
Speaking of both fractal and compression technology, there is a whole subset of weapons that utilizes both.
My favorite of these two types of technology is definitely the compression technology.
Me too. They're awesome.
Which, side note, I had never realized this because no one refers to it, but in the book it was like, they're called compo weapons. And I was like, maybe not going to abbreviate that one. It sounded a little goofy. Mag gun sounds cool. I don't know why. I could see a soldier saying that, but I feel like compo is just going to slip. Either way.
So you're never going to get fetch to catch on.
Exactly, yeah. Like someone really wanted that to stick. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, the way that the compression weapons work is really brutal. It's like the implosion grenade, where it takes an area and compresses it, but it launches a beam out. And so it's almost like a spaghettification gun, because it's like...
Spaghettification?
It would hit and cause like a Looney Tunes hole that you would immediately like bleed out, because it just like everything in the beam gets compressed to be tiny.
It literally just goes like...
Ugh, yeah. And so it's kind of cool, because in many of the entries it talks about the noise from compression weapons being one of the scariest thing on the entire battlefield. People freak out because it's like it cuts through you like a hot knife through butter.
And you wouldn't see it coming either. It would just be.
Yeah, because I feel like it would be invisible, or maybe I don't know. Tim, tell us if they're invisible or not, but. They, once again, like Plasma and Mag, you can find different levels of this kind of weapon, but the difference being it is bulkier in general. So you don't really see compression pistols necessarily, but you do find like compression carbines, and the bulky nature and the kind of finickiness that they have with different range bands, they're kind of more effective as targets get closer because of the way they utilize this compression beam. Means that, you're not going to see a lot of the run-of-the-mill troops equipped with them, but it is commonplace.
You're not going to see, like, compression pistols, for the most part, or, like,
And you're not going to see, like, rank-and-file troops carrying these kinds of weapons, but you will see them utilized in the hands of mercenaries. The Askar, which is one of my favorite units in the game, definitely utilize compression carbines, and some Vards do choose to equip their personal bodyguards with these insane weapons as well.
Boramite conscripts, for the most part, too. The gang workers, but not the gang fight, not like the professionals.
Oh, yes. But yes, because they utilize the same compression technology in their tools that, when you turn them on a fleshy target, work just the same. But that's right, the Warmites do use compression tech as well. And then, like I said, you can see things like compression cannons, and then compression bombards as well, that are, once again...
Lest we forget, the absolute coolest form of compression technology, the fashionable compression necklace. That the Taurus,
the weird compression. Yeah, that's right.
The melee versions of the San Ra have a compression gun around their necks, which I can only imagine like they're like really straight necked. Like they don't look around too much because like they like compress off an earlobe. Like
it looks like a yoke that you would have on an oxen.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
But yeah, no matter their size though, is that they always have the same functionality. They're there to punch through really heavy targets, vehicles, fortification, and I guess just scare the bejesus out of everybody.
A slightly more civilized form of killing implement would be your fractal technology. And much like the fractal charges that Kevin already talked about, they find a resonance and then shatter something at a molecular level.
And the way that they do this is by launching out like a concentrated beam of electricity, or not electricity, I'm sorry, just a beam of energy. And so, like Sergey said, the longer you hold that on whatever they're targeting, the more it
closer it finds the resonance.
Yeah, it's just
which is kind of like Star Trek, because they're always trying to find the right beam to resonate through somebody's energy shield.
That's true. Yeah, and it is like the fractal tech represents like the stereotypical beam technology you see in a lot of science fiction, and it's important to note that it is not really utilized on a smaller scale by pan-humans specifically, and it you see it in large weapons teams and things like that.
Like fractal cannons, borers that they'll set up just to go through a building.
I would say Boramites love fractal tech, correct?
Boramites, the Viri use a lot of fractal tech. Everyone has access to it, but Boramites and Viri specifically use it a lot.
Now, all of the weapon systems we talked about so far are, generally speaking, used by most of the factions. You're going to find them utilized in some way or another. But continuing forward, we're going to kind of talk more about the more specific weapons. And I think the first is, let's talk about the Isorian phase weapons.
Phase technology is a very experimental, very dangerous, and ultimately very frowned upon technology in Antares space, and it is uniquely utilized by the Isorian Senatex. On the surface, a phase rifle is no different than any other sort of plasma weaponry. However, it utilizes phase technology to desync itself from normal space-time.
Sick.
Yeah, it's super sick.
That's cool.
Essentially what this allows the wielder to do is fire it, desync itself from real time, fire it again, fire it again, fire it again, fire it again, and then resync. And then all of those shots happen in real time at once. So you would essentially see a sniper pull a trigger one time and 8 bullets fly out, which is terrifying and would instill the fear of the unknown in you in a really weird way.
I mean, it is still finicky, though, because it's you have absolutely devastated me on the battlefield by, wiping out whole units before in that way. But then I guess there has been instances where you only get to shoot once. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's an unstable technology.
Kind of like all the phase technology,
which is represented on the battlefield by the fact that you actually have to roll to see how many times you do get to squeeze the trigger when you're desynced from space-time.
Now, continuing on with weapon systems that are definitely probably more dangerous than they should be. All of the weapons used by GAR.
Yeah.
The GAR are interesting because in their description and in our previous videos, they do utilize simpler technology that's less advanced as far as the rest of 7th Age technology, but they still utilize some of the technologies. They have plasma-based energy weapons in the form of their what's it called?
Scour guns.
Scour gun, yes.
Scour guns.
Yes. But the one technology that really stands out that the GAR utilize is what is called distortion weaponry. And distortion weaponry is basically so dangerous because it is so unstable and violent that it rips holes in time-space continuums. And that's what it's doing. It's literally distorting space and time around
They're essentially
wherever
shooting
it's been
out
used.
Tiny little black holes at people.
Yeah, it's messed up.
Yeah,
it talks about how whole worlds will be rendered completely useless by anybody who utilizes a more advanced nanosphere tech and stuff like that, because it literally just leaves behind this it's almost like radiation in a different form.
Well, then there would probably be weird little gravity wells, because once you rip open a piece of space-time, I don't imagine it just sutures itself back together.
I imagine that it would look a lot like the world of the Stalker games, where there's these anomalies left behind that can do a myriad of horrible things to you. Or in this movie I saw, The Endless, where it's I could imagine a soldier being caught in an infinite time loop, he's just and gets killed, then he just reappears all of a sudden, is dies again.
I always imagine it like nutty. A D&D Sphere of Annihilation. Well, and it would just be hanging there, so you're just walking around having a nice walk, and then all of a sudden you're getting sucked a little bit to one direction. You're what's going on? And then gone.
Yeah, no bueno. and the GAR are kind of really willy-nilly with this technology, because it's basically bombs, and they fire them from the battle suits, they fire them from launchers, they fire them from cannons, any way that they can get them to the enemy, they utilize them quite heavily.
Yep, to the point where even in game this is represented by there being a distortion dice on the battlefield that can affect the GAR too, because the world around you when you're fighting them is very literally being destabilized. Boramites also use somewhat of a faction-specific type of technology. Well, it's not really faction-specific.
They weaponize it.
They weaponize a type of technology that all the other factions use for peaceful manners, because Boramites are crazy psychos that we're finding out throughout this video.
Yeah, that's true. They're very violent.
But they use the Suspensor technology that other factions use to lift their vehicles and fly around on, to clear out rubble and rock from dig sites. Now, they mount this technology on a kind of a wrist-mounted, almost a fist weapon, and they use this on enemies when they close in. So they can it's like a grav gun in like Half-Life, or
Yeah.
maybe a grav hammer in Halo, where like you'll be getting close to them and all of a sudden they'll just like pull you really hard and fast to the point where like your bones are breaking.
Yeah, or I mean, they could pick up a boulder and launch it at you.
Yeah.
Or like a ammunition case or anything. The Suspensor field can be utilized to grab anything. Like you said, it's exactly like the Half-Life 2 grav gun, which is sweet. Which is also hilarious because I always thought the drill bits and things were the most important part of Boromite close combat weapons, but it's really the fact that you don't even realize, but it's like they have gravity guns on their wrists. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I always Tim, tell me if I'm wrong, but I always assumed the drill bits were more of a practicality thing. Like you would set the drill bit into a piece of rock to stabilize you, and then use the pulling technology so your arm wasn't like as you were doing it.
That also makes sense, yeah, for sure. Similar to the Home Depot grade weapons that the Boromites bring to the table, the Virai do utilize their own, unique form of technology, which is pretty simple. I mean, it's basically, most of it is these like little lobster claw feet that end in like drill bits and scissors and all this horrible stuff.
They're mostly just like paddling you to death with
and like rip claws that are like clamps and stuff, yeah. But all of their projectile tech is kind of similar visibly to what the Fractal technology is, which is just like energy beams, and they're just like fusion cutters and things that you would use to like slice up scrap metal.
Yeah, essentially it's a blowtorch. It's a
some of
super
the
good
flamer
blowtorch.
arrays are I imagine like an iris there. It's like the concentration of the beam is what ends up happening. But either way, all of this tech is utilized just as easily to slice through organic material, and to good effect, especially when the Virai are up close.
The final section of weapons that we're going to be talking about is my personal favorite, hand weapons. Put up your dukes!
That's right. Even in the advanced far future of the 7th Age, you definitely are still getting into melee combat, and the weapons that Antaran factions bring to bear are pretty brutal and vary greatly in their
and super
type.
weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah, like, you're not getting any swords here. Like, it's always going to be something odd.
Let's start with my favorite, which is specifically utilized by the Nuhu of the Concord, the Isorian, and I guess the Freeborn, if they have been kicked out of the club. And it's the first most insane weapon because it's literally like a wizard staff. Although, I will say, the Imtel stave can take many different forms. I think some Nuhu have they probably ponder orbs. They might have some kind of like a circlet or whatever, but the device is used in the same way no matter what. It basically allows the Nuhu to utilize their extreme control of like the nanite sphere that lives around them to produce these insane bolts of plasma energy that are like launched not incredibly terribly far ranges at their enemies and subsequently explode in violent plasma explosions. And it is so freaking cool. I love it, and it makes the Nuhus so bizarre, and definitely one of the more brutal weapons.
All of a sudden you would be charging in, and at this frail-looking, tall, weird humanoid that as you got close, they take like an orb out of their pocket and turn into like a plasma bender.
Yeah,
like they're
it's
just
insane.
Like plasma.
Oh yeah, it would be so cool. And now the thing with the weapon is that the Nuhu does need to utilize what is called a nanodrone as well to be able to produce the nanites required to utilize the weapon in its highest capacities. But definitely when utilized correctly is one of the most dangerous hand weapons in Antaran space.
Oh, the most dangerous hand weapon.
Yeah,
hands
absolutely.
down.
Yeah, you can kill vehicles. We've done it before.
My personal favorite hand weapon in Antaran space is also a plasma-based hand weapon, and it's the Gar Plasma Claw. This weapon is powered by the unstable plasma in a Gar suit, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just a giant metal plasma steam-powered claw that can crunch anything that it touches. It's strike value 5, so in game turns, it crunches as hard as a mag cannon.
Yeah, if you find yourself in the middle of that can opener, you are doomed.
Yeah, you're a goner. Of vehicles, goners.
Yeah.
People, goners.
Goners.
Beasts, goners.
Gar outcasts that step out of line,
Goners.
they're like jelly.
Believe it or not, goners.
Like Sergey said, there are no swords. However, we do have several
oddly
types of
enough,
whips.
Yeah.
Now, and it's like, it's specifically because so the Boramites, which love lava mites, utilize electro lashes when they're like hurting these things, and basically all it is it's like a metallic orb that sits in a lightsaber handle, but then when that falls off it remains connected by like an energy beam, so it becomes like an energy lightsaber whip that they can utilize. And then the same tech is mounted on the end of a long lance when they're riding a locomite, and basically used in a more, you know, direct sense. And then mag whips are a thing, or lashes, mag lashes are a thing utilized by a lot of the different factions, in all honesty.
Yeah. Mag lashes are kind of terrifying.
They're sweet. It's like a metallic, it's almost like a spinal cord in the way that it's set up, but it's like a giant metallic cable that ends with like, you know, some kind of bulb, and then power is run through the entire thing, so it's literally like whip cracks, like insanely powerful. And you can basically, I mean, it's strike value 1, so you could take someone's arm off with something like that pretty
Once again,
easily.
Maybe drawing false equivalencies, but it hits as hard as a rifle does. Now, it should be noted that the pistols and the tractor mauls that we mentioned earlier are also used, and I guess primarily used in the case of the tractor mauls, in close combat. The pistols can be used at a very close range effectively, and the tractor mauls are actually better used in a close range. I mean, you're just hurling people around like crazy. Also, many of the soldiers in Antares space do not have hand weapons, but still fight in close combat. So one would imagine that they would all have some sort of martial art. I kind of imagine like they all play up to the individual prowesses of those.
That makes sense.
Like I imagine the Concord are just like they're seeing something before it happens almost, because the intel is telling them, duck.
They fight like Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah, counter left, move right, he'll miss.
Oh yeah. Whereas like the Algorand probably utilized the Kirk double punch all the time.
Oh yeah,
they hit their hands
There's
together.
no evidence for that, but it's true.
The Boramites, I would imagine, like bare fist boxing pugilists.
Yep. Well,
right?
and the Freeborn would be the craziest. Because
like Krav Maga.
Well, no,
or
because there's like crazy cybernetic implants
That's
all
true.
over them. So like you would be like fighting a Freeborn, and he would throw a punch, and then all of a sudden the punch would be way closer to your face because he has like an extendo
or
arm
like
hitting you.
a
Like
poison needle comes out their elbow.
yeah, exactly. It would be
They're like Fade Routh. He's like, I will kill him.
Yeah,
I will
it
kill
would be
him.
nuts. Yeah, you would like try to grapple them, and all of a sudden he would have like a mechano jaw like clamped down on your neck. It would be nuts.
He has Jack's arms.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Well, that was fun. I love talking about space guns and laser rifles and
space wizard magic wands
wizard
that fire
staffs.
plasma.
Yeah. and gravity
spaghetti guns,
black hole grenades. Yeah. And it's the truth. Really, the thing is that Antares is a super high science fiction setting, and I love that they made sure that the weapons and technology utilized by your troops make sure that it's right there with it. Now, if you liked this discussion as much as we liked producing it, you should absolutely like the video and help battle the algorithm along with us. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications enabled so that you can see when more lore videos come out.
If you want to support the channel even further, we do have a spring link right beneath this video where you'll be able to purchase TTW swag, such as Kevin is wearing right now. Kevin, model for us. You're so beautiful.
But the best way to support our channel has always remained joining our amazing and thriving Patreon community. Any pledge that you decide to go with gains you access to our new video development vlogs, which we produce every month, and we really appreciate the support.
And with that, we'll see you on the tabletop.
We'll be right back.